Hey guys, welcome to PHP from Scratch. So this course is designed for both beginners and experienced developers alike. And I designed it for learners who really want to grasp both the basics and advanced concepts of PHP programming. And I just want to take a little time to explain a bit about how this course is structured, because the way that you take it can really depend on your skill level and where you're at. So the course kicks off with very beginner-friendly sections. I would say these are more like learning modules where you'll dive into fundamental PHP topics like data types, functions, loops and iterations, superglobals, object-oriented programming. This foundation is crucial for understanding the core principles of PHP. Now, as the course progresses, we kind of shift gears towards a hands-on project-based approach. We're actually going to be creating a job listing website from scratch. And one thing that I really want to make clear is that it's not really about building a job listing website. In all honesty, the project could be anything. The goal of this project is to give you a real-world example of how to build and structure a PHP application from scratch. Vanilla PHP, no framework or anything like that. Because I think you don't find many courses, at least in my experience, that take this approach. I think most courses focus on just teaching you the basics or jumping into a framework like Laravel. So this course and this project are really meant for you to kind of understand how a framework like Laravel works under the hood. And that's why I think it's a great precursor to learning Laravel. In fact, in the coming months, I'll be releasing a Laravel course, and we're going to be building basically the same project, but Laravel offers a lot more features, so we'll be able to add more features to the project. In this course, we're going to be building it from the ground up. So I'll just go over some of the things that we'll be doing. So we'll be creating the entire, directory structure, separating the core or the framework of our application from things like controllers and views. And we'll create our own router that's inspired by the Laravel framework. It'll even be able to handle middleware for authorizations to protect certain routes. And we'll be using Laravel-like namespacing and auto-loading to keep our code organized and clean. We'll use the PSR4 standard for auto-loading classes with Composer. What else? We're going to be creating our own database class that works with PDO, and that will handle our database connection to MySQL, as well as querying the database. And we're going to learn quite a bit of SQL as well. And we'll be creating our own authentication system where you can log in, register. We're going to relate users to job listings, so only that particular listing owner can manage that listing. And we'll also do things like add search functionality so we can search by keyword and location. So we're doing this without any help from any framework or any libraries. And that's what I really want to stress. And we're going to be building this from, absolute scratch. And this is a great way to learn how to build a PHP application, but it's also a great way to learn how a framework like Laravel works under the hood. Now, there's a few ways to take this course, and that really depends on where you're at, your skill level. If you're a beginner, I would say, go through the course in order, start at the beginning, and just go through all the learning modules and then the project. But if you're more experienced, you can kind of skip around the beginner sections or just, go to the ones where you don't feel 100% comfortable with that topic. And then you can just jump right into the project. So you can always go back and review the beginner sections if you need to. What I don't want to happen is to have more experienced developers just start in the beginner sections and say, well, this course is too easy, I already know this stuff, and give up. Because I promise you that it does get more advanced as we move along. All right, so I think you guys will like it a lot. I think you'll learn a lot, so let's get started. All right, so before we write any code, I want to talk a little bit about what PHP is, what it's capable of, what it's used for, etc. So it stands for PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. Yes, the P actually stands for PHP. And it's an open source server-side scripting language that's used to primarily develop web applications. It can be used for some other things, but it's best known and best for web development. It's been around since 1994, and it's one of the most popular languages on the web. And it's still used by something like 70% of all websites that use a server-side language. And this includes content management systems like WordPress, frameworks like Laravel. These are all PHP-based.
In fact, this course is kind of a precursor to my Laravel course, which will be released in the coming months. And PHP is used to build anything from a simple contact form to a full-blown social network. And it's also pretty easy to learn, and it has a ton of resources available. Getting set up is also pretty easy when you compare it to many other server-side languages. So let's go over how PHP actually works. So when a user goes to a website that is a PHP page, the web server recognizes that because the page has a .php file extension, which is unique in itself, that you can type in a URL that leads to a PHP page. You can't do that with something like Python or C#. So when it realizes it's a PHP page, it sends it to the PHP interpreter, and that PHP interpreter then reads the file and executes any PHP code that's found on that page, because that page can also have HTML in it. And that interpreter also has access to any databases that you want to use, as well as the file system, and then the output of that PHP code, which is in HTML format, is then sent back to the client, which sends it to the user's browser. Okay, so it's a server-side language, not to be confused with front-end JavaScript, which is a client-side language. So server-side means obviously it's executed on the server, the output is sent to the browser. And that's different from client-side JavaScript, where the code is actually executed in the browser. Okay, JavaScript can run on the server with tools like Node.js, but that's a totally different topic. But just know that with client-side code, the end user can actually see all of your code. All they have to do is go to the source. They can't see your PHP code, so anything you write in there, any database credentials you set, anything like that, can't be viewed through the browser. All right, so why use a server-side language in the first place? There's a lot of reasons, but these are kind of the big ones. So security, like I said, client-side code can be viewed by the end user. Code that's written on the server cannot. It's more efficient. It makes the browser not have to do as much work, and this is important for things like mobile devices. Database access, so if you're building any kind of complex application like an e-commerce website or social network, you're going to have to use a database. File system access, if you want to read and write to files, you can do that with PHP or just any server-side language. Authentication, so server-side code is needed for any kind of custom authentication, and that's usually done through sessions, which allow you to maintain user state and store user-specific data across multiple requests. And again, this is essential for features like user logins, shopping carts, personalized user experiences. So why use PHP? There's a lot of server-side languages out there, and I'm not one to say that you should use one or the other. I do love PHP. I also love Node.js and Python. I think that they all have their place, but these are just some reasons why I think that PHP is a good choice for a lot of developers. I won't say everybody. It's not the end-all be-all, but it is a good choice for a lot of people. And I'll talk more about which type of developers really go for PHP in a little bit. So it's very easy to learn, right? So not just the syntax, but also the setup and the environments and all that. You have a ton of flexibility. In fact, when using vanilla PHP, meaning no frameworks like Laravel or Symfony, it's so flexible that you can get yourself into trouble if you don't write clean code, because you can be open to certain security vulnerabilities and other issues. And we're going to go over that stuff in detail in this course. So you can create things really fast, real quick with PHP, which is why I think that it's the most popular language among freelancers. And as a former freelancer, I can tell you that getting projects out to clients in a timely manner is extremely important. PHP is completely open source. It has a great community. You can always find answers when you're having issues. PHP.net documentation is great, and it's a great resource as well. So easy web server integration. If you're using Apache or Nginx, it's pretty easy to get set up. And then HTML in PHP files. So this is something that is really unique to PHP, and the reason that you can just put HTML right into a PHP file is it was really designed to be kind of a templating language. So you can have a PHP file that contains HTML and then have tags, PHP tags, that you can wrap PHP code in to execute that on the server, and then the output of that is sent to the user's browser. And this is different than other languages where you need to use some sort of templating engine or a front-end framework like React or Vue. PHP in itself is pretty much a templating engine. And then database integration. And another thing that makes PHP great is that it has a ton of database support. It has drivers for MySQL, Postgres, MongoDB, and many more. And this makes it very easy to connect to a database and perform CRUD operations. We'll be using MySQL in this course, along with PDO, which is a PHP extension that allows us to connect and query our database really easily and very securely. All right, so PHP has been around for a long time, and it's gone through many changes. It definitely has its pros and cons. One of the biggest cons is that it's very easy to write bad code, as I mentioned in the last slide. This is because it's so flexible and you have so much freedom. You can write code that's very hard to read and maintain. So it's easy to write sloppy code, and it's easy to write insecure code. Now, with that said, the solution for this is to learn how to write clean code, and this is something that we'll go over in this course, and we'll be using a lot of object-oriented programming, which is really what you want to do if you're just using vanilla PHP. We'll also be using a lot of modern PHP features like namespacing and auto-loading. Now, another solution is to use a framework, specifically Laravel. Laravel is very, very powerful. It's built, obviously, it's built on PHP. It's very opinionated, and it forces you to write clean code. So most people that become PHP developers, they either go into the WordPress content management world, or they go into Laravel. All right, so if you're planning on like freelancing and building kind of basic websites, you want to use WordPress, but you want to know how to customize it, that's one way to go. If you want to build, powerful applications with really custom code, then Laravel is probably the way you want to go. This course is to really give you a good solid foundation in just vanilla PHP. Okay, and you can build applications, powerful applications, without a framework, which isn't very common in many languages. Like if you use Node.js, you have to use a framework if you're going to build something of any worth. So yeah, I mean, Laravel is such a great framework that even people that don't particularly like PHP do like Laravel. It's extremely clean, it's secure, very easy to learn. Like I said, I'll be releasing a Laravel course in the coming months, so stay tuned for that. But there are a lot of forgive me, but there's a lot of idiots on the internet that have really never used PHP. They just jump on the bandwagon and just trash it. Or if they have used it, they used it back in version 4 or something like that. It's improved a lot. It's gotten a lot more secure. So my advice would be not to listen to a lot of the idiots online, honestly. So who uses PHP, and what type of developers, and which jobs? So PHP is used by some of the giant companies like Facebook and Wikipedia. However, it's not extremely popular among FAANG-type companies. Where it really shines is in small to medium-sized businesses, and it's also very, very popular among freelancers. So if your goal is to become a freelancer, PHP is the language I would definitely suggest, because you can build things really fast, and that's what your clients want. And you can build just about anything. They don't care about the language. Your clients care about the end result. So PHP is also very popular among content management systems like WordPress, Drupal. WordPress accounts for a huge chunk of websites. When I was a freelancer, I would build WordPress websites, and knowing PHP really well helped me a lot. And it allows you to get in there and customize themes, customize plugins, and even create your own plugins. And web agencies also use PHP a lot. So if you're looking to get a job at an agency, PHP is a great language to learn. I'm not saying that you shouldn't learn PHP if you do want to work at a huge company, but it's not as popular as some other languages like Python and JavaScript at Amazon or Microsoft and places like that. It's one of the most popular for just about everything else aside from giant companies. And when you think about the number of companies around the country or around the world, I mean, there's a lot. So that's why it accounts for so much of the web. But that's it, guys. I just wanted to discuss some of this stuff before we jumped in. So in the next video, we're going to talk about getting PHP set up on your system. Okay, so before we get started, we have to install PHP on our local system because you can't just run a PHP file and expect it to work and expect it to parse. You need some kind of server. Now, there's different ways to do this, and it's different on different operating systems. So in this particular video, I'm going to show you how to get set up with Mac OS. And in the next video, I'll show you how to get set up on Windows using a tool called Laragon, which gives you PHP, it gives you an Apache server, MySQL. It's a complete software suite. Now on Mac OS, you can simply install PHP using Homebrew, which is the package manager for Mac OS. And if you don't have Homebrew, you can just grab this command here and open your terminal, put it in, press enter, and it'll install Homebrew. And that's the same command from this Homebrew website, brew.sh, so you can grab it from here as well if you want. All right, once you do that, you can use the brew command to install packages. So brew install package name, and in this case, you're going to run brew install PHP, which again, I'm not going to run because I already have it. But once you do that, you can check PHP-V, which will show you the version. And as you can see, I'm using 8.2.7. If you have an older version and you want to update it, you can say brew upgrade and then the package name. So in this case, PHP, and that will bring you to the latest version. All right. Now, if you're using a software suite like Laragon or XAMPP or anything like that, you have a designated folder that's your document root. That's where you create your projects. When you do it this way, it can be anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just from my home directory, I'm going to make a directory called projects. You can call it whatever you'd like, and then cd into projects. And then I'll make a directory just called test-project. And it'll say this is our website or app, whatever we're building. And then from there, we'll cd into the test project folder, and then I'll create a file. And you can do this through the file operating system or through the file manager. You don't have to do it through the terminal. So if I say touch index.php, that will create a new PHP file. Now I want to open up my text editor. So with VS Code, you can use the code command, and then the folder that I want to open is that test project folder. So I'll say /tilde, which is just my home directory. I'm sorry, /, and then projects, and then test project. So if I do that, it'll open up another window with VS Code, and you can see that I have my test project folder open, and I have an empty index.php file. Now from here, I'm just going to go ahead and put in my opening PHP tag just because I want to show you how we can actually run this file. I'll get into what a PHP tag is and all that very soon. And I'm just going to put echo and then a string of hello world. And we want to end that with a semicolon. All right, so I'm going to save this file, and I want to run this in the browser. So what I need to do is run the local PHP server, which comes with PHP. So I can go back to my terminal here, or I can open up my, integrated terminal by using tilde, command tilde, or you can go up to view and then terminal. And then from here, we can run our PHP server with PHP. In fact, before I do that, I'll show you I can run this specific file in the terminal with PHP and then just the file name. And you'll see I get hello world, but obviously that's not what we want to do. We want to show it in the browser. So we'll say PHP and then -S. So we want to run the server, and we're going to run it on localhost, and then we can put the port that we want. So I'm going to run it on 8000. All right, so I'll go ahead and run that. You can see PHP 827 development server, and I can command click on that, and we see hello world. So it's parsing our PHP code. All right, so that's pretty much it. It's very easy to get set up on Mac using Homebrew. We don't have, MySQL or anything like that. We're not running an Apache server, but this will suffice for development. All right, in the next video, like I said, I'm going to show you how to get set up with Windows and Laragon. All right, so if you're on Windows, you have a couple options. XAMPP or XAMPP was popular for a really long time, and I mean, it's still used, but it's a little outdated. I think a more modern solution is Laragon, which as far as I know is only available for Windows. It's a great way to get started with PHP and MySQL because it does include PHP, an Apache server, and a MySQL database, and you won't have to install MySQL separately later on because it's included with Laragon. So you can download Laragon from this website here, so laragon.org. So you just want to go down to you can either get the portable or the full. I would suggest just downloading the full and installing it. Once you start Laragon up, it will show you a screen like this, and you'll also have in the bottom right, you'll have an icon that you can double click to open the screen. There's also a bunch of options if you right click. So from here, you can start and stop Apache and MySQL. If you click on the web button, that's going to take you to just local hosts. So that's the root of your document. So basically where you want to create your projects. And of course, you can create subfolders and so on. And then if we click on database, that opens up a tool where you can connect to your databases and you can add columns and rows and columns. You can create new databases. So really cool. I mean, there's a lot that is included here. If you click on terminal, it uses Commander, which is a third-party terminal, and you can see I'm in my www, so that's my document root. If I do an ls, you can see the folders that I have in my basically my server. Now, this document root is really important because that's where you need to create your projects. Unlike with Mac OS, when we installed PHP with Homebrew, you can use any folder. With Laragon, you have to go to your C drive. So let me just open up my file manager here. And if I go to this PC, C drive, and then you'll have this Laragon folder. And in here is where basically all your server stuff is. But this www folder is your document root. You can see these are the same files that you saw in the terminal. So what you're going to want to do is create a new folder, and I'll just create a test, just like I did with the Mac video. We'll say test project. And let's say in that test project, I want an index.php file. So I'll go ahead and say index.php. Say yes to that. All right, so now what's really cool about Laragon is it automatically creates virtual hosts. So because I called this test project, I can access it two ways in the browser. So I could go to /test-project, and it should load the index.php, which is just blank, just a white screen. In fact, let's go and open that up. I'm going to open this up with VS Code. All right, and then let's see, for now. All right, so for now, let's just go into index.php. Let's say PHP, and then we'll echo hello world. Save that. If I come back over here and reload, we see hello world. Now you can access it this way, but like I said, it creates what's called a virtual host with a local domain. So since I called it test project, I can just go to test-project.test. Okay, we use the test domain. Okay, now that's not working because I just have to restart Laragon, or not restart Laragon, but Apache. So if I go right here and click stop, that will stop all services, and then I click start all. You'll get a little notification that it's going to start up, and then come back over here, reload, and we see hello world. So now anything I put in that test project folder is accessible through this domain, and of course it's just local. So I think that's really cool, and you can go to your host file and manually edit this if you want to use a different domain, but like I said, it creates it based off of the folder name. All right, so now you're ready to start coding PHP. So as far as text editor or IDE options, you have a lot, and you probably have something that you already use. I do recommend using Visual Studio Code, at least for this course. It's free, it's open source, it has a large community of developers that contribute to it, great extensions, it's cross-platform, so it doesn't matter if you're on Windows or Mac or Linux. That's what I'd recommend, and that's what I'll be using. Now, there are some things I want to show you within VS Code, but before that, I also want to mention that you should have Git installed on your system, which is a version control system. And I would suggest that you make commits throughout the course. It doesn't have to be after every single video, but just after we add a bunch of features, it's good to make a commit here and there, and you can upload it to GitHub or GitLab. I will be doing my first commit on camera, but after that, I'll be doing it off camera. Now, as far as VS Code goes, let me just open that up real quick. So this is actually the final code for our project, but I just want to show you some extensions that I would recommend. And there's not much. So the first one is IntelliFence. Actually, I'm just going to type in here PHP. And you'll see that one of the first ones is going to be this PHP IntelliFence. So this will give you, code hinting, IntelliSense. It will help you with auto completion, parameter hints. It does a lot. So I would definitely recommend installing that. The next one is PHP. It's probably right here, PHP Doc Blocker. So I like this. It allows you to quickly add doc blocks, which are multiple lined comments that describe what a function or a class does. And I really want to stick to writing clean code in this course, and this will help us do that by documenting our code. And just to give you a quick example, if I go to, let's go to our framework folder and router, you'll see before every function, like this register route function, I have this doc block. And it says what it does. It has any params for the function as well as what it returns. And it's simple to do this with that extension. So all I have to do is do a slash and then double asterisk and then enter. And it will, if I already have my function defined with the parameters, it'll actually add that stuff for me. And then I can just kind of go through and say, what these are, like string and so on. So it's something that I would recommend and something I'll be using throughout the course. All right, now as far as formatting, there's an extension called Prettier, and if you write JavaScript, you probably know what that is. It's better than the default code formatter in VS Code, but you can't use it with PHP out of the box. If you want to use it with PHP, you actually have to install the plugin using NPM. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just using the default editor. But if you want to set it up so that your code formats when you save the file, what you can do is go to the settings and just search for format. We'll just say format, and you should see format on save. So you want to make sure that that's checked off. And then in your JSON file, which you can get to with Command Shift or Control Shift P, and then just type in JSON and then open your user settings. And I'm pretty sure if you want the formatter to work with PHP, then you have to add this if it's not already there. So we have our PHP block and then editor format on save set to true, and as the default formatter I have it set to this, which is your IntelliFence client. So that's what I'm doing. That's how I have mine set up. Of course, if you want to use Prettier with the plugin, install it with NPM, you can do that as well. All right, so that's all I wanted to do in this video, is just kind of show you my environment. In the next video, we will set up our sandbox. All right, guys, so this course is broken into two parts. The first is full of learning modules to learn the fundamentals and the syntax in PHP. And this includes data types, functions, loops, superglobals, working with a database and PDO, and so on. So each lesson in the learning modules will have its own independent code. And I have all of the code for you in something called a sandbox. This is so you can have the code for reference later on. Now, the second part of the course will be us building a job listings project where we'll set up a vanilla PHP website from scratch with sort of a custom framework with a custom router, namespaces, all that good stuff. So if you're already comfortable with PHP, then you may want to skip around the first part, or the first, I think it's 8 sections up until the project, or you might want to just go right for the project. Now, as far as the sandbox goes, you'll have 2 zip files to download in this lesson, and one is going to be called PHP Sandbox Starter. This is where you'll have all of the start code for each lesson, and the other is called PHP Sandbox Finished, which obviously is the finished or final code. Now, many of the lessons will have some starter code, whether that's just HTML or HTML with some PHP. You can either copy the starter code for each project and paste it in your work file, or you can just rename PHP Sandbox Starter to PHP Sandbox and use that as your work folder. Put that in your document root. And what I'm going to do is just copy any starter code for that lesson into my current file and just go from there. So it's up to you on how you want to do it. So what I'm going to do is go to my work folder, and remember, if you're using something like Laragon, it's going to be in your C drive, Laragon/www. That's your server root. If you're using XAMPP, then it's going to be in your C drive, htdocs. And just make sure that whatever suite you're using, you know where to put your files for your server. So what I did is installed PHP with Homebrew, so I'm using the built-in PHP server, which means I can use any folder I want for my work folder. So I created this projects folder in my home directory. And I just have the test project here, which I'm actually going to delete. And then I'm just going to create a new file called php-sandbox, and that's where I'm going to work for the next 7 or 8 sections. And I'm not going to bring, all this stuff into there because I don't want to have to type out 01 variables data types / PHP tags printing comments. I just want to be able to use a single file. So any starter code, which a lot of these have, I'm just going to copy from that particular file. So from this index.php or whatever section or lesson we're working on. All right, so I'm going to open PHP Sandbox within VS Code, and I'm going to create an index.php. And from here, I'm just going to put in hello. And then I want to run my server, so I'm going to open up the terminal here. And remember, I'm using the built-in server, so I'll say php-s localhost, and I'm going to say run that on port 8000. So now I have that running. If I go to localhost 8000, I should see hello. So I'm going to make that smaller. We'll make this smaller. And we'll close up the sidebar here, and we should be ready to go. So in the next section, we're going to start to learn PHP.